While we are designing or kind of strengthening our culture, adding in our social emotional learning components, we also need to be aware of the different cultures that we have here at Concord. We need to understand how we identify ourselves and how our students identify themselves. So that way, when we're making choices and we're making these decisions and we're building these relationships, we are doing it with the understanding of who our students are. One of the ways that you can do this at the beginning of the year is to have students create a sample identity chart. And in the sample identity chart, how would they identify themselves? What are some words, phrases that they would use to describe themselves? Would they describe themselves in terms of gender? What about ethnicity? Would they describe themselves in terms of their hobbies? Would they describe themselves in terms of their relationship to other people within their family? Maybe they have a lot of siblings, so they're the sixth child. That would probably be good to know, so you can kind of have that conversation. Well, what do your older siblings do? Do you have to take care of your younger siblings? Um, give you an idea of where they are coming from. And the same thing with you, though, is you need to know who you are. How do you identify yourself? Because until you can start relating to others, you need to know who you are. And so I would highly suggest doing this for yourself to see what are the characteristics that you identify with the most. What are the first things that you put down? And you could even change the size of maybe boxes if something's really important to you. Okay, maybe your religion is. Maybe you write that really big. And this is something that the student just needs to share with you to get to know that student a little bit better. So when we're doing all the get to know you activities, this would be a great place to start. You can also find out a little bit about maybe their emotional state. You can find out a little bit more about their feelings on subjects, but leave it as open ended as possible because you want to see what the student is bringing to the table. Once you have that, you can start kind of combining it into like a profile. And here's just a simple template if you want something to record it on, because I always have trouble going back and forth. But this way, you can kind of start combining. Okay, what do you know about the culture of the student? Where are they coming from? What is their family like? What ethnicity are they? How do they identify? You can start adding that in. You can also start identifying if you need to make accommodations for access. So maybe they tell you that they live with multiple parents. Okay. They identify as a stepdaughter and a daughter because they go back and forth to two families. So maybe for access, you have to consider when the student's going to be able to access the Wi-Fi. Are they able to access it at both places or not? Engage. So when you're engaging them, and you find out that someone's from Guatemala, well, what can you do? How can you incorporate that into a conversation, into a lesson, so that way you can engage the student and bring something of theirs into the classroom as well. Be cognizant of implicit bias. Implicit bias, especially this season with everything that's been going on top of COVID, we've had a lot of conversations coming up about other issues with racial injustices and different ethnicities. No matter what you think, everybody has some implicit bias. It's formed by your identity about who you are. Being aware of these implicit biases, though, are what's going to strengthen you as a teacher because you can open up the conversation to these. And when I say implicit bias, these are biases that you're not aware of, that you just carry with you based on subconsciously picking them up throughout your life history. And if you really don't think that you have biases, if you think that you are immune to this or that you're so cognizant of who you are that it doesn't apply to you, I challenge you to try Project Implicit. Project Implicit was developed, I think it was by Harvard, to look at different biases that you may have. You will need to create an account. And once you create an account, you can choose which type of bias test or biases test, I don't know if that's the word or not, biases test that you want to take. So like I took, for instance, gender science, because I'm a scientist teacher. And I found out a lot about myself by doing this, and that I do have my own biases when it comes to gender and science. And so these are a few different ones. And if you're curious, try it. If you think that you have no biases, try it, because chances are you do. And that's okay. We all do. But we also need to be aware and cognizant so we can open up the conversations. Oops, sorry. Okay. When you're aware of who your students are, it will be a lot easier to include materials to support them, to connect with them, to connect with who they connect with. You want to include these life experiences wherever possible. For more information, we do have a culturally responsive professional development this session, a voluntary one. It's not required, I don't believe, but I would highly suggest the culturally responsive teaching professional development if you have the opportunity or if you would like to know more about this area.